The tension was palpable as Representative Jasmine Crockett entered the Senate chamber for the special hearing. The audience was already buzzing, aware that Senator John Kennedy had been vocal in his criticisms of her recent policy remarks. Cameras rolled, ready to capture the inevitable political clash. The committee session was supposed to be routine. But when Jasmine Crockett was invited to testify on police reform and social equity issues, the tone shifted quickly. Senator Kennedy, known for his pointed Southern charm and sarcasm, seemed poised for confrontation from the very beginning. Kennedy leaned into the microphone with a smirk and fired the first volley. He questioned Crockett's credentials, insinuating she was more of a political performer than a policymaker. The room quieted, anticipating her response. Crockett straightened in her chair, her eyes narrowing slightly. With calm authority, she began laying out her qualifications: law degree, prosecutorial background, civil rights advocacy. Her tone was firm but respectful. The crowd leaned in. Senator Kennedy, she began, I didn't come here for a lecture, I came to talk policy. If you're here for entertainment, I suggest Netflix. A soft gasp ran through the chamber. Crockett's mic drop moment had just begun. Kennedy, caught off guard, scoffed and tried to redirect. He accused Crockett of promoting anti-police rhetoric, and said her words were divisive. But Crockett didn't flinch, she had prepared for this exact line of attack. You keep saying I'm anti-police, Crockett replied. But I've lost friends to unjust policing. My critique is of a system, not the individuals who risk their lives for us every day. Her voice didn't waver, and the senators knew she meant every word. Kennedy shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He tried once more, accusing her of supporting policies that weaken law enforcement morale. But Crockett wasn't letting that narrative stand. What weakens morale, she said sharply, is a system that ignores corruption and punishes whistleblowers. If accountability hurts morale, then morale wasn't built on justice. Applause rippled from the gallery, despite attempts to quiet the crowd. Kennedy's usual confidence seemed to crack. His southern drawl took on a defensive edge. Ma'am, your tone is not helping your cause, he said. Crockett shot back instantly, then perhaps it's your cause that needs help. With the committee moderator trying to interject, Kennedy raised his voice, claiming Crockett was being disrespectful. But it was clear he had underestimated her rhetorical skills. Crockett calmly responded, disrespect would be coming here unprepared. Disrespect would be ignoring lived experiences. I came ready with data, with facts, and with the courage to speak truth. The audience murmured in agreement. As she continued, Crockett brought up recent statistics, use of force data, racial profiling numbers, wrongful arrest trends. Her case was watertight, and even those on the fence were beginning to take her side. You say you want safe communities, Crockett continued, so do I. But safe doesn't mean silent. And it sure doesn't mean suppressed. She delivered each word with conviction that echoed throughout the chamber. Senator Kennedy interrupted, this time visibly agitated. Are you accusing me of wanting suppression? He barked. Crockett gave him a steady stare and replied, if the shoe fits, Senator, wear it. That single line set off an audible reaction in the room. The hearing wasn't just tense now, it was historic. Rarely had a representative challenged a senator so directly and effectively. Kennedy stood up, clearly rattled. He muttered something under his breath before asking the chair for a recess. Crockett stayed seated, cool and collected, refusing to be drawn into theatrics. Walking away doesn't change the truth, she called after him. It just shows you couldn't face it. Kennedy paused for a moment at the chamber doors, then stormed out without another word. The moderator attempted to restore order, but the energy in the room had shifted. Crockett wasn't just a witness now, she was the headline. And Kennedy had made the grave mistake of underestimating her. Crockett resumed her testimony without gloating. She focused back on policy, reform, and real solutions. Her poise under pressure only strengthened her message and credibility. Backstage, staffers whispered about the exchange. Even members of Kennedy's own party looked stunned. No one expected her to command the room so thoroughly, or send a sitting senator walking out. News outlets were already buzzing. Clips of Crockett's powerful takedown began circulating online. Hashtags with her name surged on X and TikTok. The public had picked a clear winner. Crockett's office issued a brief statement, Representative Crockett stands firm in her commitment to justice, accountability, and respectful but honest discourse, even when it makes the powerful uncomfortable. The political fallout was swift. Kennedy's office released a defensive press statement trying to frame the walkout as a protest against disrespect. But the footage told a very different story. Analysts across networks praised Crockett's preparedness and poise. "This wasn't a stunt," one commentator said. "It was a masterclass in factual advocacy and moral courage." Crockett returned to Capitol Hill the next day to applause from colleagues. Her presence now carried new weight. She wasn't just a representative, she was a symbol of resistance and clarity. Kennedy avoided interviews for several days. When he finally spoke, he tried to pivot the conversation, but reporters pressed him on being shut down by Crockett. His answers were evasive at best. Meanwhile, Crockett continued her work. She introduced new amendments to ongoing police reform bills, using the attention from the hearing to push for legislative impact. Civil rights organizations publicly commended her bravery. Young activists saw in her a reflection of their own voice. She had become more than a politician, she was an icon in the making. Even critics had to acknowledge the skill she displayed. Political rivals admitted she handled the confrontation with both passion and professionalism. The moment was undeniable. In the days following, political talk shows replayed the moment Kennedy stormed out over and over. Analysts dissected Crockett's calm tone, her factual approach, and the devastating timing of her clapbacks. Social media exploded with clips and memes of the exchange. Users dubbed it Crockett's Court, and some even edited her quotes into music remixes. The cultural moment had legs far beyond politics. Youth groups across the country invited her to speak virtually. Colleges requested guest lectures. Her staff scrambled to keep up with the growing number of public appearances being requested. The hearing that was supposed to be routine turned into a platform for Crockett to galvanize national attention. Her inbox was flooded with support from constituents, celebrities, and even fellow lawmakers. Senator Kennedy, on the other hand, faced growing criticism, even from some conservative pundits. "Walking out made him look weak," one commentator said. "He got out-debated and didn't know how to handle it." Crockett later sat down for an exclusive interview, where she humbly stated, "I wasn't trying to embarrass anyone. I just wasn't going to let misinformation or condescension go unchecked." The interviewer asked if she would apologize. Crockett smiled gently and said, "I'll apologize the day facts become offensive. Until then, I'll keep showing up prepared." As the footage climbed millions of views, news anchors began calling it one of the boldest moments in recent political hearings. It wasn't just political theater, it was truth to power in real time. The moment also reopened discussions about women in politics, especially black women, facing double standards in tone and demeanor. Crockett had navigated the tightrope perfectly. "Had I raised my voice or stormed out," she later said, "the headlines would have painted me as angry or unstable. But I stayed planted in truth. And that's the difference." Behind the scenes, other lawmakers reached out in private to thank her for saying things they hadn't felt brave enough to say publicly. Her courage was contagious. Crockett's approval ratings in her district surged. She'd already been admired for her authenticity, but now she was seen as a national leader, someone who could stand her ground anywhere. Kennedy tried to regain momentum by giving a press speech on law enforcement appreciation, but reporters kept bringing the conversation back to the hearing. Senator Kennedy, one reporter asked, "Do you feel Representative Crockett exposed a weakness in your approach to debate?" His silence was louder than any response. Meanwhile, Crockett returned to the House floor to push for a police data transparency bill. It was a bill she had mentioned during the hearing, and now it had real momentum. Crockett's office published a white paper detailing the reforms she advocated for: body cam funding, independent oversight boards, and de-escalation training mandates. Community leaders praised her for turning a moment of conflict into a movement for progress. She wasn't just talking, she was legislating. Political strategists began speculating about her future. Could she be a viable Senate candidate? Maybe even a VP pick down the road. The buzz was real and growing. In a follow-up committee session, Kennedy was noticeably quieter. When Crockett entered the room, he avoided eye contact. The power dynamic had shifted irreversibly. Crockett remained gracious, not gloating or provoking. Her strength was in her substance, and everyone now knew it. She later said, "This isn't about me versus him. This is about truth versus spin. Facts versus fear." The quote was soon printed on t-shirts and signs at rallies. Activists began organizing under a new hashtag, #CrockettCourage. Young organizers said her stand reminded them why they got involved in the first place. Kennedy's political team struggled to contain the damage. Internal reports showed a significant dip in youth and minority support following the incident. Political analysts began including Crockett's name in their 2026 Senate forecasts. One pollster called her the most important voice in modern progressive politics. More invitations poured in, from CNN, MSNBC, even late-night comedy shows. But Crockett declined most, choosing instead to stay focused on policy and her constituents. In her next town hall, she was greeted with standing ovations. Voters thanked her for standing up for truth, for dignity, and for refusing to be bullied in a room full of power. "We finally saw someone stand their ground," one constituent said, "without yelling, without insults, just fire and facts." Crockett used the moment to educate others, launching a YouTube series where she broke down policies and explained how citizens could make change at the local level. Schools began inviting her to speak on leadership and civic engagement. She accepted every invitation she could, eager to empower the next generation. Meanwhile, Kennedy's office stayed mostly quiet. His team released vague press blurbs, but the buzz had faded. The public had clearly moved on, and Crockett had taken center stage. National civil rights groups began fundraising with Crockett's quotes printed on banners. She had become a face of accountability and resilience. "I didn't win an argument," she said at one rally. "I just stood firm in what I knew to be right. And I won't apologize for that." Senate leadership privately acknowledged the hearing as a turning point. Kennedy had been silenced not by noise, but by intellect, and they all knew it. Crockett's work caught the eye of major donors who offered support for her next campaign, whatever that might be. The backing was real, and the opportunities were opening. In an NPR interview, Crockett reflected on the hearing. "I wasn't there to go viral. I was there to be heard. That it resonated with people, that's just proof the truth still matters." Her office became a beacon for grassroots organizers, who found in her not just a politician, but a relatable leader who didn't flinch under pressure. The Kennedy-Crockett exchange became a case study in political science courses. Professors used it to illustrate power, rhetoric, and representation in real time. Back on Capitol Hill, Crockett continued working tirelessly. She said, "This isn't about winning moments, it's about building movements." And she was doing exactly that. Even months later, the clip of Kennedy storming out remained one of the most viewed political videos of the year. Crockett's composure was studied and admired. When asked if she would face Kennedy again, she replied, "Absolutely. The truth doesn't get tired, and neither do I." She published an op-ed in the Washington Post, titled, "We don't have to shout to be heard, we just have to speak truth." It went viral instantly. As the year went on, her legislative wins piled up. She became a co-sponsor on a national police reform bill and was appointed to lead a bipartisan task force on justice oversight. Back home, her district celebrated her success with a town-wide event. Kids painted murals of her quotes and held up signs thanking her for speaking for the voiceless. "They tried to write me off," she said during her speech. "But I picked up the pen and rewrote the story." Crockett's name began circulating in higher political circles, governor, senator, even vice president. She dismissed rumors but didn't deny her ambitions. Through it all, she remained grounded. "My job," she told one student, "isn't to clap back. It's to lift up. But if someone comes for truth, I'll meet them right where they stand." Her supporters knew one thing for sure. Crockett didn't just shut down Kennedy, she turned the power of words into a weapon for change. Kennedy has yet to fully recover politically. The moment continues to haunt him in public debates and campaign events. Crockett's shadow looms large. History may remember it as a political clash, but to millions, it was something more. It was the day integrity outshined power. The day courage was louder than status. And in the end, Jasmine Crockett didn't just win an argument, she earned a place in the future of American leadership. Not by shouting over the noise, but by speaking with undeniable truth. Black Heart.